Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today, we're excited to have ex-BigLaw recruiter Sadie Jones here with us to talk about some summer associate job scenarios. Your Law School Toolbox host today is Allison Monahan, and typically I'm with Lee Burgess. We're here to demystify the law school and early legal career experience so that you'll be the best law student and lawyer you can be. Together with the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. I also run the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always reach us via the contact form on lawschooltoolbox.com, and we would love to hear from you. With that, let's get started. Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today, we're excited to have ex-BigLaw recruiter Sadie Jones here with us to talk about some summer associate job scenarios. So welcome, Sadie.
Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure. Well, let's just get right to it. You start your summer job, but you're not given a lot of direction. There's no mentorship program. There's no formal work assignment system. How can you get the most out of it?
So I would say this actually could be an opportunity to kind of build those skills, that are going to put yourself out there and kind of, take some ownership over your career and your learning and all of that. This is obviously not the ideal situation. It's great if you know going into it that they have all this stuff set up. So it's something I suggest that people ask about in the interview process, just as an aside. But let's say that either they said they had it and they don't, or it's just not something with those things in place. I would say, it's kind of on you to get the most out of it. And again, take some ownership. So I would say, you can find mentors informally. A lot of times the person they assign to you isn't a match anyway, and you end up finding other people that you sort of connect with better, or maybe are in an area you're more interested in. So I would say, maybe ask people to coffee or lunch, try to figure out if there's someone who's willing to give you some advice, and that can sort of be on you. In terms of work assignments, I would be asking around, is this something I can help with? Look at areas that sound interesting to you, or maybe, again, someone that you think seems interesting or seems like they could be a mentor, ask if they have work. So it'll be more on you, but it doesn't mean you can't get the exact same amount out of it just because it's not set up for you.
Right. And I think sometimes people overestimate the value of having this stuff set up. I've definitely been a summer at places where sure, they had a formal work assignment system, but I also had two people who both thought I was working full time for them. Exactly. I had a mentor, and I went and talked to the mentor, and she's like, wow, that sucks. I don't know what you should do about that, So,
and I think sometimes these assignment systems, they can actually sort of backfire because people just start picking stuff and don't realize how long things are going to take. They just sort of see it posted and they're like, oh, I'm going to, pile up a whole, thing of assignments and have all this work on my plate. And so sometimes I think just having it in that formal way can definitely backfire, and, doing it in a more informal way and kind of just talking to people can be more organic and work out better.
Yeah, and I think the thing you don't want to do in this situation is just sit in your office and kind of wait for things to come to you, because that is unlikely to go well.
Absolutely. And the truth is, it is going to come back on you. You're not going to be able to say at the end of the summer, halfway through, oh, but no one gave me any work, or I didn't know what I was going to do.
Well, yeah. Why didn't you go talk to someone? There's probably someone also in charge of the program, or even, the person who recruited you. Go talk to that person and say, hey, it doesn't seem like I have, I have some extra time. Is there someone I should be talking to get some work? Is there something else I could be doing? Could I be doing pro bono work? You want to be doing something every day.
So I would say, focus on the positive of this, which is that you're going to build those skills that you're going to need later on anyway. Very rarely are lawyers just given all their work and don't have to go figure it out in any way.
Right. And this can also tell you something about this firm that you're at. Is this a sort of situation you want to put yourself in? If not, then maybe this isn't going to be a great fit for you.
definitely. I think you can learn a lot about how they do their summer programs.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, I've gotten my first work assignment and I turned it in, and unfortunately, it didn't go very well. I feel like I've ruined my summer already. Is there any way I can turn this around?
Absolutely. And I think this happens to a lot of people. It may not be your first assignment, but somewhere along the way, something's going to go, not the way you wanted or expected. And so to me, the situation, it's not so much about what went wrong or what maybe you misunderstood about the assignment. It's more about how you handle the situation of it not going well. And I think the key here is to face whatever it is. Don't hide out. Don't, not want to see the person who gave you the assignment again. Generally, when we had this come up and we knew about it, on the summer committee or who's ever in charge, we usually tried to have them do another assignment with the same person and have it go better. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's like the ideal, is that you get another chance and you talk to your mentor, someone maybe that you feel more comfortable with, about what might have got wrong, what questions you can ask, how you can handle the situation differently. So go back and, figure out what it was that didn't go right and try to, do it differently the next time and change some of those things.
Right, because I think you have to keep in mind everyone wants you to succeed here. This isn't like the Hunger Games. We're not trying to pick off people or whatever. Like, the goal is actually in most places that, they give everybody an offer. So if something didn't go well, I think you've got to be kind of proactive about saying, okay, I understand, like, this didn't go well. I understand why. And let me show you what I can actually do. And then be really clear that you're going to get it right the next time.
Absolutely. And, there are some people that aren't used to working with summer associates, or it's just not a good fit. So, not every case will be, oh, it's a good idea to do it again with them. You could learn something for the next assignment with someone else too. And I've definitely seen situations where it is totally out of your control and everyone knows that this person is, let's say, hard to work with, or, has expectations that are unrealistic for a summer associate. Especially, I find some of the more senior partners aren't used to working with summer associates and sort of forget that they don't know what's going on. So there are situations where everyone knows it has nothing to do with you. So, figure out whether it's something that you legitimately can change, or it was just like an unfortunate assignment kind of thing.
Right. And sometimes the reality is people give summers assignments that they don't really think there's an answer to, but they're not totally sure about that, but they don't necessarily always tell you that. So you might feel really frustrated and like you screwed this up because you did not find like the piece of law that they were looking for. But then, I definitely have had situations where I went back to the person who assigned it to me. I was like, look, I've tried like everything I can think of. I've like turned every stone over twice. Like, I'm just not finding anything. They're like, oh yeah, that's kind of what we expected. We just didn't want to have like a real associate basically wasting their time on this because we thought there probably wasn't anything. I'm like, you could have said that to begin with, but they don't.
Or sometimes summers don't even know that it's sort of like a made up assignment. And so they're thinking it's for something, which it doesn't matter. You should treat them all the same. But I think sometimes you just don't know what the expectations are of you.
Yeah.
And so to try to clarify as much as you can by asking questions at the beginning, I would say too.
Yeah, and just be aware that sometimes they do give summers these assignments that they don't really actually think are going to pan out, and you may not know that. So you might not have actually screwed it up anyway. But if you did, definitely, if it's something like you just didn't turn it in on time for some reason or whatnot, like that, you've got to correct.
Yeah, I think that timelines are probably the number one issue that people come up with here. So make sure that you know what the expectations are, whether there are like a few different timelines, it's just due at a certain time. And if they didn't give you a timeline, it does not mean it's due the last day of the summer. I think people get this idea, well, they never told me, so I just thought like as long as I turn it in before I leave. And there's very rarely a situation where they're going to give you something right at the beginning, that's just due at the end and that's it. So just be really clear that's something that you're responsible for if it's your, work assignment.
Right. You want to have that clarified. And also you want to be clear that, if someone says, oh, you can turn in a draft to me by this day, they don't mean a draft like it's not ready to go. You want to make sure it's as close as possible to ready before you turn that into them.
That's so, so important. Nothing is a draft. Nothing should have typos or mistakes or shouldn't be what you consider, really good work.
Right. You want it to be as close to being able to be ready to use as possible. All right. Let's move on to another question. You are busy with assignments, but someone is pressuring you to do pro bono work. What should you do?
So I think it's always hard figuring out how to balance different assignments. And I wouldn't necessarily say that, let's say that something's client work and something's pro bono work. I wouldn't say, oh, the client work is automatically more important and comes first. So I think you have to balance different things, like who gave you the assignment is important. And, what is the due date? What are the expectations? So, like, could you take both these things on because one is due in 2 days and one is due in 2 weeks. So, that you could do both at the same time. I would also think about what you're going to, get out of the pro bono. Maybe you get to go to court or you get to do something more involved, which happens a lot with pro bono. So while I wouldn't take on things that you are not able to finish or cannot balance at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily write it off as the first assignment's more important than the second. Obviously, if you already took something on, you need to finish it. And so you can't, just drop the thing you already had. You're kind of going to need to balance these things. Also, the key here is being really clear with people. So you could say, I'd love to take that on. I have this that's due, now, and it's taking up X amount of my time. Do you think I could still take this on if it's due, and figure out when that's due? So I think the worst case is sort of taking a bunch of things on and then not telling people what else you have going on. So you end up in this overwhelmed situation, which is just a really, really common problem with summer associates. So it's about communication.
I agree. And the reality is, sometimes things might just be hitting the fan all at the same time. And, maybe again, this is a sign this is not the right place for you to work long term.
Totally. That's a really good point. I mean, also sometimes maybe you'll have to work really late to finish it because you agreed to do it, and right. So you're in a situation where it kind of sucks. But, if you're able to get it done, you got to put in, more time or something to get it done.
Right. And I think also if you have friends who are in the summer class and, somebody doesn't have a lot of work and they're looking for something to do and you're a little overwhelmed, I think it's totally fair to go to whoever asked you to do this pro bono work or whatnot and say, hey, this person would love to come on board and help out with this. Is that okay with you? Because they're most likely going to say, sure, or whatever. We don't really care. And totally. Then maybe you can offload some work on them.
Absolutely. I also think in these situations, if you're not sure what to do, that's a time to talk to a mentor or someone on the summer program, and pose the question and say you're in the situation, you're not sure how to handle it. That's what they're there for.
Right, exactly. You don't have to come up with everything on your own. And like we said earlier, these are great skills to start developing now because you're going to need them later.
Absolutely. I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's true.
It is true. You've got to figure out how to offload work if you're going to survive in a law firm. All right. Next question. I made a total fool of myself at a summer event. How can I recover from this?
So first of all, this is unfortunate. I'd love to say my advice would be to have this not happen in the first place, which is to really kind of monitor your drinking and, how you're handling these. I'm assuming this is a social situation. Just remember that you're always at work. So even though a lot of these events will be fun, it's work and you're not just hanging out with your friends. And so keep that in mind going into it. But let's say you make a mistake, something happens, you drink too much, you say the wrong thing to somebody, whatever it is. If it's something where you need to apologize, you should apologize directly, depending on how big the situation is. I wouldn't make a situation bigger than it needs to be by making a big deal about it. I think this is something people tend to do. I think we've talked about, like, if you're late for an interview, don't keep talking about it. You don't need to put the focus there. So it's similar here. If you need to apologize, just apologize. I don't know what came over me. This will never happen again. And don't let it ever happen again. You need to monitor how you're handling these situations going forward. So I think people can make a mistake and come back from it. If it's something that keeps happening, it is going to reflect on you, and it could, have something to do with not getting an offer at the end of the summer, because they're looking at how you behave aside from just the work. So I always think that, there's a way to make it right, especially if it's sort of a one-off thing.
Yeah, and obviously I totally agree with you. You should not have this happen if you can possibly avoid it. Yeah, I was actually a summer associate with a girl who jumped in the Hudson River at an event. So that was instant legend. But you don't probably want to be that person, because, you could still go look that up and find out who it was. Yeah, just don't be that person. All right. You're midway through the summer and it seems to be going fine, but you haven't worked in a practice group that you asked for, or you haven't worked with someone that you really want to work with and was kind of the reason you came to this firm. Is this a problem, and what can you do?
Well, I think it depends, how much you want to work in that group, and how important it is to you. I would say, you can't just sit back and say, oh, I wasn't given an assignment or there wasn't something available. If there's something you really want to do, then to me, it's on you to either get to know the person or try to get work from them. I think people are really receptive to that, and not a lot of summer associates tend to make the effort and come forward. I want to work with you if there's anything that I can get involved in. You could even, sit in on a meeting, which isn't going to cost them anything and probably won't be a big deal. So I would say be proactive. If there's no way you can get a work assignment in, you can still do a coffee or a lunch or whatever it is, try to get to know the person. So I would say, if you make no effort and you haven't tried, and then it's the end of the summer and they're looking at practice groups, you can't expect much. If you put the effort in and it just didn't go that far, that's, sort of another story. But I would say, be proactive and take some ownership.
Right. And I think most lawyers are pretty flattered if someone comes up to them and legitimately says, hey, I'm really interested in this area that you're working in. I would love to either work with you or shadow you for a few hours. Is that something you're open to? Even if they don't have the specific assignment or they don't generally work with summers or whatever, they're probably going to say minimum, oh, why don't we grab coffee? Why don't we grab lunch? Oh, you can come to this hearing, you can come to this meeting, whatever it is, because they want people who are interested in what they do. I mean, they need to find people who want to do that type of work so that they actually have someone that they can bill out to do the work.
Absolutely. And I honestly can't think of a situation where anyone really blew a summer off or just absolutely said no.
Right. I mean, that would be it's just not done.
Well, and if they did that, why would you want to work in that group if they're that uninterested?
Yeah, exactly.
Usually people love selling their group and being popular among the new associates. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all kind of a pyramid scheme. They need people to do the work so they can bill them and make money. I mean, that's this reality of how a law firm works. You need fresh blood coming in your area.
Exactly. They love it. And usually if you go to the most senior person, they're the people who want, to impart their wisdom on you and stuff. So I think what happens is that people are sort of intimidated. And so they don't even go to that, senior partner in the group to talk about it. And I say give it a try.
Right. I mean, I've definitely known partners who were head of, whatever group, and it was something super specific, and they just loved this area of law, and they would talk to anybody about it. And if you were willing to go to lunch with them and listen to them drone on about this for 2 hours, it was the happiest moment of their life. So you could get a lot of brownie points by just going to lunch and be oh, wow, that sounds interesting. Oh, tell me more about that. It wasn't that hard.
Lawyers love to talk about themselves, so it might be a little secret. Boring. Yeah, but if you just don't say anything, they'll be oh, it went great. that was a great
Right,
lunch or
exactly.
great conversation.
Yeah, you just literally have to be like, so what are you working on? Oh, how did the hearing go? Oh, that sounds interesting. How did you handle that situation? Like, you don't have to actually contribute that much for them to be pretty happy.
Exactly. And I really think it will make you stand out because it's just something that a lot of summer associates are intimidated to do. So I say, try to make an effort to like seek people out from the beginning.
Right. Well, let's flip this question around a little bit. A lawyer at the firm is hitting on you, inviting you to lunch, etc. What can you do?
Well, I feel like this situation would depend, on the details of it. So what I would tend to do is make sure that there's somebody else who's going to be there. If you're going to say yes, and you don't have to say yes. You're not like required to go to lunch with someone who asks you. And I know it can be awkward to say no, but I think everyone knows how to sort of put somebody off, like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'm busy with these summer things right now, whatever it is. I mean, it's always better if it's like a group thing or at least a few people. And in my experience, when people are inviting to summers to lunch, it's usually at least 2 summers. Like they know that that's sort of going to be weird if it's one-on-one. So I think that always helps. If it's a situation where it's really, inappropriate and is like harassment, obviously you can talk to HR, you can talk to, the recruiter, like you can tell them what's going on. So I think it sort of depends on like how serious the situation is. But to me, I would always feel more comfortable in like a group situation if that's sort of the vibe that you're getting.
I agree. I will say I've had this happen more than once at different summer associate situations. Yeah, and I think trying the group thing, and in one case, someone lied to me about it, and I went down and was like, wait, where's everyone else? Yeah, super awkward. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really tricky situation to be in because obviously it's not always like 100% clear. I mean, I had a different situation where my office mate was actually the one who was like, is this person hitting on you? I'm like, I don't think so. Are they? She's like, yeah, I think they are. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Turned out later that she was totally right. But yeah, it's a super tricky situation. And again, maybe a sign this firm is not for you in the long run if they're like allowing this behavior to continue because
Exactly. Because I think a lot of these people have a reputation, of having been like that. I do hope that things have maybe slightly changed in the last few years with like, I don't know, the world's a little different, the environment's a little different. I feel like people are speaking up more. So
yeah, I think hopefully. Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is there should just be a zero tolerance for anyone in the firm, like hitting on any summer. It should just not be done. But obviously that was not the case. So yeah, shitty situation. All right. As the summer comes to a close, you get the feedback that you may not be getting a full-time offer. What's the best way to handle this?
Well, first of all, I would try to not be emotional about it at the firm. So deal with whatever your feelings are, outside of work. If you're kind of getting some negative feedback or feeling like things are not going well, I also think you need to face whatever it is. It's basically never happened where someone is going to not get an offer and they had no clue that that was going to happen. To me, they were choosing not to listen to what was being told to them because just the nature of law firms, like they're used to, giving people feedback along the way. They're not trying to spring it on you at the end. So they probably are going to have this kind of conversation like things are not going well. It kind of depends where it is in the summer. So I would say anywhere like by halfway through the summer, there's always a chance to turn it around. If it feels like it's way further than that, and you're getting, just negative feedback or that it's not a fit or what's, not gone right, and it doesn't feel like there's much opportunity to turn it around, I would start facing that before the end of the summer. Start thinking about, what you're going to do, how you're going to handle it. And I would try to be as professional as possible if you're going to be going into, having these difficult conversations at work. And so, it happens that people are emotional and we can't necessarily control it, but I would try to deal as much with that outside of work so that you're not bringing it into these conversations and you can have like a rational conversation about what's going to happen and how it's going to go. If like there's no way to turn it around. If there is a way to turn it around, I would ask that. Is there anything I can do? I really do want to work here. I'm sorry that things haven't gone, well. I would love some feedback. I would love an opportunity to figure out, how to change it.
And have you ever seen or heard of summers actually getting fired during the summer, or do people just generally let them kind of finish it out?
It would have to be something like major. Right. I have heard of it, but I'm talking about something where someone did something illegal or just so unethical. It would just have to be something really, really major. And generally, I think they would probably come up with an arrangement where the person said that they had to leave early. And so it didn't come across as a firing the way that law firms have separation agreements. Yeah. Where you don't say anything bad about them. They don't say anything bad about you. So I think it's extremely rare. If that happened, it was something that happened and it was like
really major.
Yeah, like unavoidable. So generally they're going to let you finish out the summer and give you a chance. Like you said, they want to give an offer to everybody. This is worst case scenario for the law firm.
Right. All right. Well, let's say that I do get an offer, but I kind of want to see what other options might be out there. Can I delay accepting? I mean, what's the best way to put off responding?
So you can, but I would say it kind of depends on your time frame. It also depends on the market, the job market. So, if it's a great job market and you feel like, you have some sort of, some power in the situation, generally, I think the offers are kind of open until, sometime in the fall. Sometimes these rules change, but there's like a date where everybody is supposed to decide, by. Law firms will give you an extension if you come up with a reason, especially like for a clerkship is a really easy reason, and that extension will probably be kind of indefinite. You have to like check in with them. I don't suggest lying. I don't suggest saying that you're looking for a clerkship if you're not. You're going to get caught in that lie at some point and say the wrong thing. I think it's fine to be vague and say, you're still figuring some things out, or, you're deciding on something with your family. Can you have a few more weeks? That kind of thing. And I would say, I would do that if you have something directly that you're applying for. I wouldn't try to get some kind of like indefinite extension for months just to apply to lots of other places and see if you get, any hits. It's probably better to go with the firm that you hopefully enjoyed your summer at, got to know the people at, and then you can always find something else later. So I think it sort of depends on like how for sure the other things are, how the job market's looking like. But what I think is not a good idea is sort of pushing it out for, no reason. You don't even know what else you're looking for, and burning some bridges at the firm, because at some point they get the feeling that you're not that excited about them. And it's hard to go back from that, with them also. Like they gave you an offer, they want you to come back. So you don't have to accept on the spot. You don't even need to accept before the due date, but it really needs to be reasonable if you're asking for an extension.
Right. And, there are circumstances where you might need to do that, if you're with a partner and they're doing like a medical matching or something like that. But it has to be some particularly solid reason to just not decide. You have to kind of decide at some point one way or the other. All right. Well, final question. You get a cold offer or no offer at the end of the summer. What do you do next?
Well, first of all, I highly suggest not accepting it. I have seen the situation where someone says, well, you actually gave me an offer. It was in writing. I'm taking it, even though you were told it wasn't a real offer. I I know it's kind of a weird situation, this whole idea of an offer, not an offer. It is technically an offer. And there's a lot of controversy about whether this is helping people, hurting people. You can talk about all sides of it. But accepting an offer at a place where you're told you're not wanted is just never going to work out well. And I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think there's anything good that's going to come of it. I understand why you might have an inclination to do it if you feel like you don't have anything else. But I would
seems really crazy.
But I'm telling a true story of something.
Oh, I believe it. I could envision certain people I know doing that, actually. That I didn't even thought about that as an option, to be honest.
Well, and I think the thing is a firm doesn't know what to do because they did give the person an offer in writing, let's say. So the person can accept the offer. Sometimes these cold offers are said in different ways. They're either said directly, like, this isn't a real offer, but we don't want you to leave without a real offer. Or it's sort of like, we expect you to make some changes if you really want to come back. And the changes are sort of things you can't change, let's say. Or they're parts of your personality or something like that. So I would just say, understand what they're really saying. And then you have to say, okay, this didn't work out. And so what am I going to do next? And so you're going to have to sort of pivot and figure out whether you're going to look for a clerkship, you're going to look for another firm. If you are technically given an offer, you can tell people that you received an offer if you did. If you're not given an offer, then you have to be honest about that. You cannot lie about it. But I will say that everyone I know who didn't get an offer for whatever reason did end up finding a job or finding something else. So I think the initial feeling is like, this whole thing is over. I'm never going to be a lawyer. And that just doesn't happen. If that's what you want to continue to do, you will find another job. I think you just need to say, like, this is the situation. This didn't work out. What's next?
Right. And I think you need a storyline too. You need to practice your story. It needs to be neutral. And you don't really need to go into a lot of detail. Like, and I think the more objective you can make it, the better. Like, this firm just wasn't a great fit because I want to do this type of work and they were really more focused on that type of work. Something that doesn't involve you saying mean things about anyone is definitely going to be best.
Never, ever badmouth the place. I don't care what happened. They're not going to badmouth you. I would just say, make a clean break. And honestly, you should appreciate you didn't end up somewhere where it wasn't a good fit and you weren't wanted and you probably wouldn't have liked being there. So if you can get some perspective on that, I think it usually does work out, that if you didn't get an offer, you got a cold offer, it wasn't the place that you would have fit very well.
Right. Yeah. And I think, if you are in the situation, something like a clerkship can be a great transition point. Or even if there are different cities that you were considering looking in, like, go ahead and commit to a different city and look there. And that's an easy explanation for, particularly if you got the cold offer, that's a great one. Because it's like, I did get an offer, but, they just don't have an office in this new city. So now I'm really looking here and, it's just really where I want to be. I think that's, a great excuse.
I agree. Picking something where you're making a real change from what it was before is a lot easier than looking for a comparable firm in the same city.
Like a litigation job, New York City. It's like, okay, they didn't do the type of work you want to do. Really? Like every firm in the city does the same type of work.
It just, it begs more questions.
Right. And not to say you can't do it. And I think, it wasn't a great fit for me. As always, people are probably not really going to probe on that because they understand you could be getting into some tricky territory that probably people don't really want to get into.
I also think generally, even if the person got a cold offer, no offer, there's usually people that they made connections with who are willing to be a reference for them, which is always a great option. It may not be an option for you, but if it is, it's a little bit easier to have someone say something nice about you at the place, even if it didn't work out.
Yeah, even somewhere I had a terrible experience. Like one person I worked for loved me and one person hated me. And, the person who loved me called up friends of his who were judges and got me interviews. So there are probably people who do like you still.
I always see that. And then the person, who liked you feels bad about what happened.
Exactly.
So they go out of their way. Yeah.
Totally. No, that's totally what. And also, yeah, it was definitely. He was like, okay, I understand this is like not your fault. And like, we're going to figure this out for you.
Yeah. Use it to your advantage, basically.
Definitely. All right. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
My final thought is kind of that I think some of these things that may not go well are things you can sort of prepare for ahead of time, go in with a plan of like, what practice group you're interested in or groups, what kind of work you're looking to get, kind of a strategy for how you think you're going to handle the summer, I think is always a good idea going into it. And then also know that things are going to come up that you didn't anticipate and you will be able to deal with it. There's always a way to, to make it better.
Right. I think it's that combination of kind of having a plan, but then rolling with the punches and not getting too set in what like you want and you're looking for, that usually the most successful people at the end of the summer can look back and say, well, it wasn't exactly what I thought I'd do coming in, but like that was a really great experience. So I think that ideally is your goal.
Exactly. I agree.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. With that, we are out of time. For more career help and the opportunity to work one-on-one with us, you can check out careerdicta.com. If you enjoyed this episode of the Law School Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. We would really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to Lee or Allison at lee@lawschooltoolbox.com or allison@lawschooltoolbox.com. Or you can always contact us via our website contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.